He has been filling out his cabinet. We do know that there is a trade representative designate. Richard Lighthizer, I believe, has been announced for that potential position there. What do you think about that pick? And also, we're still, as of our discussion, we still don't have an agriculture secretary pick yet. What do you want to see happen on that front?
Well, I'll talk about trade first. I think this was a good pick, and I think honestly, we use free trade and fair trade interchangeably, and I think if we do anything going forward, we have to understand that fair trade and free trade are not necessarily the same thing. This pick gets that. He understands that, and I think what we're going to see is it's okay for us to put our interests first. Everyone puts their interests first when they're entering into business transactions, and then you try to come up with a deal that's good for each party involved in that. But the key here, I think, are bilateral trade agreements as opposed to multilateral, because what happens in multilateral trade deals is the United States typically ends up behind the 8 ball, and that's not good for us as a nation, and there's no reason in the world why we should be constrained to take a bad deal simply because we don't want to hurt someone's feelings. And I think Donald Trump has articulated that point very well, and this pick indicates that we're going to strive for fair trade in a bilateral way, and those agreements will be much easier to enforce and as opposed to a multilateral trade deal.
Your name has been bantied about at one time as a potential agriculture secretary pick. We've seen some other names surface since then. Not saying that you're not going to get it, but it seems to have cooled a little bit. What's the latest on the agriculture secretary pick, and have you had any conversations with the president-elect on this?
Well, here's what my concern is. I hope that whoever that individual is has a good understanding of the vital role of agriculture in this country. There's a national security imperative. There is a rural broadband initiative that's got to be completed. There's a whole lot of things that come to bear. Economic development in rural communities. We've been chasing smokestacks for years to try and improve quality of life in rural America. We need to understand that that's not necessarily the best way to go about it. And whoever that individual is, I hope understands that and has a real ability to communicate with folks who live and work in rural America. And so I do think that obviously I have a geographic concern because I live in the South and Mid-South, and I want to see a Southern perspective at the table as a counterweight to what has been somewhat of a Midwest monopoly when it comes to ag policy. So, yeah, I'm going to gravitate towards someone who is maybe a little more in the southern latitudes and has a better understanding of the diverse ag economy that we have in the state of Arkansas and in states like Georgia and throughout the South, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas. So that's kind of what my concerns are.
Just respectfully, I'm asking, are you in the mix or not in the mix for the post?
Well, you know what? I'll just let that statement stand for itself. There has been some talk about that, but really too early to tell. I know this has been a long, drawn-out process, but typically an ag secretary is one of the last to be named, and so if we're looking at schedules, the president-elect is on schedule. So let's see what happens over the next few days.